Hey CMA buddies, let's today start with 10.2 and 10.2 will be talking about structuring of organization for implementation of strategy. This primarily will be talking about the organizational charts that exist in the organization, right? So before we look into different types of the organization chart, let's understand what exactly is an organization chart. Organization chart is very important. Why? Because it defines the formal structure of the organization, as in how the formal structure of the organization exists. These charts define the levels and roles in an organization. So what are the different roles or levels that are there in the organization that is being decoded by the organization chart. Formal structures matters in two ways. Why formal structures are so very important? First of all, structural reporting lines. That means reporting lines. Reporting lines means what? There will be an employee and he needs to report to his manager, and manager in turn will report to whom? He will report to the higher management or the corporate part or the corporate structure. So that's what is a reporting line is like. So basically whenever you talk about a structuring reporting lines, they basically shape the patterns of communication, as in the way that you're going to communicate to the higher authorities and the knowledge exchange as to what is the information that you want to pass on. People here don't talk about higher or lower in hierarchy or different parts of the organization. Fine. So basically they only shape the patterns of communication and knowledge exchange. So in structural reporting lines, here you don't talk about the higher or the lower in hierarchy, as in it is more or less a parallel kind of structure or different parts of the organization. The second part is structural positions at top indicates skills required to move up the organization. Since the first one we talk about is a more lateral kind of entry or the parallel kind of entry, here in the second part we basically talk about how you can grow the ladder. That means how can you reach the top position. So basically structural position at top indicates the skills required to move up the organization. So if you want to be higher up the organization, in that case you got to have certain skills that you should have acquired. Generally has specialist. Who can be these specialists? These can be the marketing people or the production people at the top. For example, you say marketing manager or marketing head for that matter. These people reach that position only based on their skills. So that's what the second part actually talks about. This indicates importance of success of specialized function disciplines rather than general business experience. So here in this kind of setup, if you really want to grow up the ladder, you got to be very expertise. You got to have good expertise in the skills that you have rather than having only a general business experience, right? So what exactly is an organization chart? It is very important because it decides the formal structure of the organization. These charts also define the roles and the levels in an organization. There are basically of two types. One is basically more parallel. So here in the structuring reporting lines, they basically shape the patterns of what the communication and the knowledge exchange. But here we don't really concentrate or we don't talk about the higher or lower in hierarchy or different parts of organizations. Whereas structural position at the top basically indicates the skills required to move up the organization, and they basically have what kind of people? They generally have the specialist. They can be marketing, production, sales, etc. This indicates importance of success of specialized function disciplines rather than the general business experience. So second part, you have more concentration on the specialized function rather than having a general business experience, right? So this diagram beautifully covers the 2 points that we have discussed above. Organizational structure importance. So basically it is defined based on the role positions that you have, the reporting lines and the formal structure. So these 3 points, if you just remember, you can basically elaborate on the top 2 points. Fine. Okay, now what are the basically 5 basic structural types? Fine, let's understand 5 basic structural types. How do I remember is the finance minister told me to revise MTP, right? That's how I remember. FM, finance minister, MTP, the mock test paper that you have. So the 5 structural types, if someone say, you remember as finance minister told you to remember the or revise the MTP. So what does FMMTP actually stands for? F stands for functional, right? M stands for multi-divisional. Then M again stands for matrix, T stands for transnational, and 5 stands for project, or the P stands for project. Fine. So it is FM, that is functional and multi-divisional, and MTP, that is matrix, transnational and project. Today we will be discussing the first two, that is the functional structure and the multi-divisional. Fine. Okay, what is basically a multi-divisional structure, or what is basically a structure of a what is basically the structure of a functional kind of organization. Fine. In basically, when you look at a functional kind of organization, the kind of setup that you will find is you basically will have a CEO. CEO is who? The Chief Executive Officer. Chief Executive Officer, and below that there will be many other divisions or the functions of the organization. Now, what are the various functions of the organization? They can be manufacturing, marketing, finance, HR, R&D, sales, production. You can make this diagram to your convenience, but functional structure basically talks about two levels. One is CEO, that is the Chief Executive Officer, and below them the person who are supposed to report to Chief Executive Officer, that is CE directly, can be the various functions of the organization. They are manufacturing, marketing, finance, human resources, R&D, so on and so forth, right? Let's understand what exactly is a function structure. Functional structure basically is based on primary activities that are undertaken by organization. So these are basically the primary activities that are undertaken by the organization. So what all they can be, like production, finance and accounting, marketing, HR, R&D, etc. As we have already discussed, such kind of setup is basically found in very small companies. In a multi-divisional structure, divisions may be split up into functional departments. So let's not concentrate on this part as such, because when we'll come to multi-divisional, we'll understand it in a better way. But for the understanding of functional structure, you just need to remember that basically this structure is based on the primary activities. Primary activities that are undertaken by the organization. Examples you already know, and such kind of setup is basically found in smaller companies, right? What happens in multi-divisional is basically the divisions may be split into functional departments. So when we come to multi-divisional, we'll talk that in detail, right? So this is how the functional structure looks like. What are the various advantages of a functional structure? First of all, senior managers can have hands-on involvement in operations and allows greater operational control from top. Fine. So whosoever is the senior manager, they can have a direct interaction or direct involvement in the operations of the particular function, right? So if I'm into manufacturing, I as a senior manager can have a direct role in that. Similarly, if I'm in the HR, then I can have a direct interaction with my employees. So that again becomes a hands-on involvement. What it does is that it basically allows a greater operational control from the top. So for example, if a senior manager is there in the HR department, specifically handling only HR department, in a functional structure, he will have more control from the top, right? Now, it basically provides clear definition of roles and tasks, increases accountability. So functional structure, what it does is that it defines the roles and tasks for every other employee in that particular function, and it basically increases the accountability. That means you are answerable for the task that you do. So in that way, it is also one more advantage of the functional structure. Then functional departments concentrate on expertise. So you got to be an expert if you got to be a part of the functional department. So what it does is it encourages knowledge development in areas of functional specialism. So if you belong to a functional department, then it's but obvious that you will try to gain expertise in whichever function that you're working in. So that's what it talks about. And it also enables centralized decision making. That means because everything has been collated, as in the data, the knowledge, skill set, everything is collated and directly goes to the CEO. So there is a centralized decision making over there. So that will ensure what? Efficient use of managerial and technical talent. So these are the various advantages of functional structure. So first of all, senior managers will have the hands-on involvement. That means he will have a direct control over the operations. Fine. And he will also be involved in the day-to-day activities on a regular basis. It also provides what? Clear definition of roles and tasks. What exactly roles and tasks that you have, and it also increases what? Accountability. Functional departments can concentrate on expertise. Fine, because it encourages knowledge development in areas of functional specialism, and finally it enables what? Centralized decision making, because it ensures efficient use of managerial and technical talent. Moving on, disadvantages. Okay, what are the various disadvantages of functional structure? Functional managers become overburdened. They are loaded with work. Why? Because with routine functions, as in they are doing the same thing again and again, and since they have to manage a lot of things, so that becomes a lot of burden on them. Hence, they are overburdened and too concerned with narrow functional interest. So basically, when you are working in a functional structure, you would find that they will concentrate only on their particular function or their particular department. Their vision will not be very wide. It will be more narrow, or probably their function centric. So eventually they are unable to take a strategic view of the organization as a whole. That's what I'm talking about. So when the interest becomes very narrow, in that case you are not able to concentrate on an organization as a whole or manage coordinated responses quickly. Functional organizations can be inflexible. So net you can say such kind of setups are basically inflexible in nature. That means because you are more concentrated and you're expert in your particular field only, and you don't have an idea of a general business experience, so that doesn't help the organization on a wider spectrum. So that's what it talks about. Okay, generally they are inward looking. What do you mean by inward looking? They are difficult to integrate the knowledge of different functional specialists. As I said, they concentrate only on their own function. So it is more inward looking. They are not outward looking. So they don't concentrate on organization as a whole. So when I say inward looking, it does mean that it is difficult to integrate. Integrate means what? Collate or bring everything together, the knowledge of different function specialists. So I cannot merge the talent of R&D and sales together. Why? Because sales is doing their own work, R&D is doing their own work. So my idea, if the organization has to grow as a whole, they both should be able to share their knowledge and basically help for the betterment of the organization, which is a bit lacking as far as the functional structure is concerned. So that's what it is all about. Then it is centralized in nature, because it's an advantage also, because it enables the centralized decision making. But because it is centralized in nature, it is not good at coping with product or geographical diversity. Because it becomes all the more concentrated, it is more centralized, you are not able to get into a lot of diverse product or geographical expansion, right? Because as I said, you are more concentrated, so you will focus only on your particular function, and that basically can take a hit on your product diversity. Product diversity means reaching out to far more places, or the geographical diversity, that is expansion of your business. So that also can take a back foot as far as the functional structure is concerned. Overburdened top management, yes, because since the functional conflicts are pushed up, so basically it leads to the top management overburden, because everything is being concentrated, the decision making is done by them, so that can actually lead to functional conflict. So one may say, R&D may say that I am doing well, whereas sales can have their own point of view, and this is something that they need to the top management need to handle. So that can basically overburden the top management from the perspective of the conflicts also and the decision making also. It can lead to line staff conflicts. That means the lower level can have a conflict. Difficult to establish uniform standards across the organization. Why? Because when I am talking about my own function, my more focus will be there. So I cannot think from the perspective of an R&D or an HR department, because I'm working in a sales. My idea is what? My idea is to basically boost the sales, but I don't know what exactly is the problem that is there in the other set of departments. So that can basically lead to line staff conflicts. Line staff means the lower level staff. They can basically have a lot of conflict, and hence you will not be able to establish uniform standards across the organization. So these are the various disadvantages of functional structure. So let's understand this with the figure. If you can remember this figure, you basically can elaborate on the points that are discussed above. So if I talk about advantages, I would say that centralized decision making is one thing. Then you would basically have a clear role definition, because your function is defined and you can have a hands-on management experience, right? But the problem is it can be very inflexible, and it can have a narrow functional focus, right? Because you will think only from your perspective and your department, and the managers can generally be overburdened, especially the top management can be overburdened. So this basically summarizes the advantages and disadvantages of the function structure. Now moving on to the next one. The next one is multi-divisional structure, right? So if you remember FMMTP, the first one is functional, the second one is multi-divisional. So what exactly multi-divisional talks about? See, when I talk about the multi-divisional structure, multi-divisional, if you remember in the functional, we just had the CEO and then we had the function directly. Now what here it would happen is there would be a CEO, then there will be a headquarters central support services. So headquarters central support will report to the CEO directly. This basically can be divided, as in below the headquarters there will be two other divisions, that is division A, division B. Each division will have their own set of function. So division A will have marketing, operation, personnel. Similarly, division B can have marketing, operation and personnel. So basically this structure becomes multi-divisional, as in there are many divisions, as far as many That's what it is. So this division basically talks about many kind of setups that you have in an organization. So general setup can be, you will have a CEO, then you can have a headquarters, which is the central support services. So all the data from division A and B will be reported to the headquarters, and division A and B will be handling various functions under them. And this division, so there can be repetition of the functions under each division, but just to make the business more easier, we basically are trying to diversify that. So the problem of diversification gets over, or it is rather more flexible if you compare it with the functional structure. When we'll discuss the advantages, you will understand it in a better way. So let's understand what exactly is a multi-divisional structure. This structure is built up of separate divisions on basis of what? On basis of products, services, or geographical areas. So when you have different products or different services or different geographical areas, you would find that there are different divisions. For example, if you take something like HUL, Hindustan Unilever Limited, this HUL company is basically a big FMCG company, fast moving consumer goods. So they will have two divisions. Say basically they have an ice cream division and they have, say, cosmetics division, right? Now this particular will say this ice cream division will have its own functional departments, and similarly is the case with the cosmetics also. So basically this is the best example of a multi-divisional structure. Because HUL is a larger company, in the larger company it's preferable to have a multi-divisional structure, because if a large company has a more functional structure, it will be more difficult for the top management to handle it. Hence, when we talk about a big conglomerates, or basically we talk about MNCs rather, multinational companies, they prefer to have something like multi-divisional structure. This structure is built upon separate divisions, right? So you know it is based on maybe product, services, or geographical areas. This structure focuses on overcoming the challenges of functional structures. So whatever challenges you had in the functional structures, you would be able to overcome in the multi-divisional structure. Here, each division can respond to specific requirements of its product or market strategy using its own set of functional departments. So you basically can respond to specific requirements of its product or marketing strategy. So if there is an issue in division A, you can respond to it, or you can deal with it separately, and so can be the case with division B also. So what are the various advantages of a multi-divisional structure? First of all, it is flexible. So whatever is the whatever is the disadvantage of a functional structure, that can be overcome in the multi-divisional structure. So first of all, it is very flexible. Organizations can add, close, or merge divisions as circumstances change. So whenever you need, you can add a division, you can close a division, you can merge, as in you can bring them together. You can, division A and division B can be merged together as per the requirements of the circumstances. Since they are self-standing business units, possible to control divisions from a distance by monitoring business performance. So even if you're sitting in Delhi and you got to manage the business of, say, Gujarat and Maharashtra, you can easily do that in case of a multi-divisional structure. That's what this point talks about. It says since they are self-standing business units, because Gujarat unit is on its own, Maharashtra unit it's on its own. So from Delhi it is more easier or possible for you to control the divisions from a distance, right? By how? By monitoring their business performance. Division managers have greater personal ownership for their own divisional strategies. So division managers basically have, or they have the sense of ownership. They basically can concentrate more on their particular division or the functions, and that will help them to perform better, and also it can be beneficial for the organization also. And specialization with a division allows competencies to develop with a clearer focus on particular product group, technology, or customer group. Or rather, you can say that basically it can help you to attain expertise, or you can basically specialize in various core competencies, which basically can concentrate more on particular product group, technology, or customer group. Management can focus on good training, right? Because the divisions are segregated, so you exactly can figure out as to where something is lacking. So in order to improve that, you basically can concentrate or focus on the good training, keeping in mind a strategic view of managers expecting to go on to main board position. So you basically concentrate on managers who are doing well and who are expected to grow up the ladder. That means they can move from a middle management to a top management. So management can basically focus on such kind of people, and they can impart good training to such kind of people, right? Conflicts across divisions can be reduced with increased accountability and focus. Conflicts relatively are lesser as compared to the functional structure. If you remember, functional structure has had a disadvantage of a lot of conflicts within the line staff. So that can be cut down as far as the multi-divisional structure is concerned, right? Okay, what are the various disadvantages? Divisions can become self-sufficient. That means they are on their own, but what happens is duplicating the functions. That means repeating the functions. You duplicate the functions, right? Because same thing is done in division A and division B. That basically may prove to be a costly affair for the corporates, right? Maybe it is possible that HR in division A and HR in division B are managing different set of peoples, but the nature of their work is more or less the same. So this can prove to be a costly affair as far as the multi-divisional structure is concerned. Hence, it makes sense to split the companies to an independent business, and such type of demergers makes sense. So it is ideal to split the companies to an independent business rather than having as a division. So that can be one thing that can be taken care of, and such type of demergers can make sense financially also and from a strategic point of view also. Divisionalization, that is the splitting up of the divisions, generally tends to get in way of cooperation and knowledge sharing between the business units, right? So division A more likely is not likely to share their ideas or their knowledge with the other division, because they can have a sense of competition. Expertise is fragmented. Fragmented means you will have expertise, but it will be in the different parts, right? It can be in a different geographies, or it can be through different product segments. And divisional performance targets provide poor incentives to collaborate with other divisions. So even if you collaborate, that may be better for the company, but that can take a hit on the incentives. Hence, the staff may not take that active interest to collaborate with the other units or the divisions. Fine. Divisions may become autonomous. Autonomous means they will have the control. They can have a lot of control over their own particular division, especially where joint ventures and partnership dilute ownership. Where the partnership and joint ventures don't have, or they rather give up on their ownership, their autonomy can actually come in. In such situations, multidivisional dilute into holding companies, where corporate center holds various businesses, especially with respect to finance, exercising little control and adding little value. The point you need to remember is more or less that it can lead to autonomy, especially where the joint ventures and the partnership basically dilute the ownership, right? You can get into the nitty-gritties of this, but not so important. I think if you just concentrate on the dilution, the autonomy, that is more than sufficient. Image and quality differences may occur across division. You may not have the same image about the different divisions, although it belongs to one particular organization itself, and there will be a quality difference, or they may be quality differences also. So there may not be a uniformity. That can again be a disadvantage. Divisions may focus on short-term performances with perspective of dominating the organization-wide process. So there may be a concentration more on the short-term performances rather than the broader picture or the long time horizon. So that again can be one more disadvantage of the multi-divisional structure, right? So let's look at this diagram, and that should be more than sufficient for you to understand this particular set of advantages and disadvantages. When I talk about the advantages, it says there is more specialization focus, right? Because that's what the multi-divisional structure talks about. Because it is divided into various divisions, there will be a lot of concentration on the specialization part. There can be divisional ownership, and there can be flexibility in operations. So these basically are the disadvantages of the functional structure, which becomes the advantages of the multi-divisional structure. And what are the disadvantages? There may be an autonomy dilution. As I said, joint ventures and partnership can be diluted, and it basically hinders cooperation. Because you belong to different divisions, there may not be a lot of cooperation among you, and costly duplication of function. So same function will be performed in different divisions, and that can basically be a costly affair. So you have to consider all these pros and cons of the functional of the multi-divisional structure, right? With this, we finished the first two parts of the organization chart, that is the functional and the multi-divisional structure. In the next chapter, or rather the next video, we'll be looking at the matrix, translational, and the project structures. If you like this video, make sure to press the like button, share with your friends, and do subscribe to our channel. Thank you for joining, and I hope to see you soon with the next video. Happy learning and take care.